Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of the Wyntis Hall Show. Sorry, we are a little late today. Blame it on Mother Nature, but I do want to thank all of you for being patient with me. I'm excited. I'm very excited. Again, thank you all for tuning in to 810 News Media Group. And as always, shout out to the greatest producer in the world, Mickey Jordan. Also, I want to thank my colleague Trevor Berryhill for being here to support me. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and 810 News Media Group. Hit the subscribe and the little bell notification so you will get all of the notifications when we go live. And without further ado, I am not going to keep you guys waiting any longer. I have with me Hill Harper.
Hey, Wyntis.
Hey, Hill. Hill Harper, the United States senatorial candidate.
Yes.
That's how I wanted to introduce you.
Listen, I love it.
So, how's it going?
It's going really well. You know, I've been excited about the campaign. We are building a true movement, across the state of Michigan. You know, when we launched a little over a month ago, we wanted to do 3 different launch events across the state. So we send a message that we understand this is a statewide race. So we did the first event in Detroit at around noon in the middle of the day, downtown Detroit. The second event was in the afternoon in Pontiac. And then the third event was in the evening in Grand Rapids. And I was expecting maybe 300 or 400 people in the Detroit one.
Right.
We had 1,200.
Oh,
Incredible.
wow. Okay.
In Pontiac, I was expecting like 50 people. In the middle of the afternoon, we had like 150. And then in Grand Rapids, I was expecting maybe 100, 150. We had like 300, 400. So the enthusiasm is there. I think a lot of people are very well aware that for the first time in 57 years, Michigan does not have a Black or African American Democratic representative in Congress.
Okay.
And I think a lot of people are frustrated by that. I think a lot of people are upset. They understand that representation matters.
Right.
And so I'm very, very encouraged by all the enthusiasm. We have tons of people who have reached out to volunteer. We're fundraising now. We're doing signature collection now, and we're creating an organization. Have a phenomenal campaign manager, and so we're really building an organization I think that's really representative of the type of senator I want to be, which is representing the people.
Okay. And we're going to get into all of that. I have one more house clearing tip I got to do. Shout out to Miss Kenya Simmons, the owner of Beautify Beauty Supply.
Yes.
So thank you for hosting us today. I just didn't want to forget to mention her, so I had to do that.
And this is a great example of, I think, what we want the campaign to represent is supporting businesses in our community. I mean, these types of businesses are job creators.
Right.
And we you and I both know that all across the state, Detroit, Flint, Muskegon, Benton Harbor, Saginaw, we can go on. There's so many places where we don't own.
Absolutely.
The businesses. Folks from the community don't own businesses in the community.
Absolutely.
And that's something that is huge for me as a small business owner. We need more. We need to shout out and support business owners, and particularly folks that are from our community that are creating jobs right here.
Absolutely.
For folks. So this is a beautiful space, and shout out to the business.
All right, thank you. So we're going to get right into it because we're going to be close for time today because of the late start. But I want to talk about disaster relief. I want you to follow me. This is where I'm going with it.
Okay.
And congressional input. We had earthquakes and hurricanes in California recently, wildfires in Hawaii, and right here, Flint, Michigan. We've been going through a water crisis for 9 years, Mr. Hill Harper, 9 years. What input would you have as a senator about the disaster relief recovery program or the lack thereof?
Okay, so just so everybody's clear, the power of our legislature is, and the ability to do things is incredible. The judicial branch rules about, is talking about whether something is lawful or not and
Right.
makes rules. The executive branch signs things or vetoes things from becoming law.
Absolutely.
The legislature is making the law and actually deciding where the resources are flowing. And for too long, we've had, I believe, a lack of representation in Washington that represents the best interests of the people. Special interests, big money interests, corporate interests, and lobbying and lobbyists have dominated the discourse of what laws get approved. The vast majority of legislation that's created, and people, folks deny this and say that's not true. The vast majority of legislation today, federally, is coming from staffers having meetings with folks who have a special interest or a lobbying interest. Those people give those people that legislation, say we really would love for this to be in this legislation or advocate for this.
Absolutely.
That gets reprinted and and oftentimes that's what is presented. So when we talk about disaster relief, fundamentally what you're mentioning is environmental. You're mentioning things that are created by polluters,
Right.
corporations. And when we talk about the environmental movement and the anti-pollution movement, to me, it's our communities that should be the most aggressive and be taking the lead in that space, even though in people's minds they think of it's the Birkenstock yoga person who's like the main environmentalist. But the reason why I say that, our communities, marginalized and poor communities, are the ones that are hit the hardest by far by environmental pollutants, by damage,
Right.
whether they're man-made contaminants and things that happen like in Flint,
Yes.
or natural disasters. Our communities are always hit the hardest, okay? So, taking the lead as a senator in the environmental and pollutant space to fight back against polluters, to fight back for the environment, is something that I know I've been doing before and would continue to do vigilantly, because we need to stop polluters. We need to stop many of the things we're seeing as an outgrowth of, in part, climate change, but also just direct polluting. Whether we're talking about PFAS contamination of groundwater, which causes cancer, or we're talking about the Flint water crisis.
Right.
Those things are direct, and you talk about negligence and or purposeful, and we can get deeper into that issue. Okay, so what I talk about all the time is that our communities across the country historically have always been the least litigious communities. And I've always encouraged, I went to Harvard Law School.
Right.
So obviously, my lens goes towards the legal side. I've always fought for our communities to be more litigious, meaning sue more.
Right.
Because a lot of the polluters sit back and say, and then just do the numbers. I know if I injure this community, they sue much less. So the cost of that injury, it's just like what happened, remember with cigarettes?
Yes.
They were actually doing the numbers and saying, we know we are killing people, and we know eventually we're going to get sued. I mean, there's letters and emails, or back then it wasn't email, but there are letters and reports that say this. We're gonna get sued. We know we're killing people, but we're making so much money, the factor of how much we think we're gonna have to pay on the back end is lower than the money we're making now.
Right.
So we'll keep on doing it.
Right.
And that's I believe, the calculus that's made quite often when it comes to our communities. There was a community as an example. So with Flint, you had, and see, and this thing is, I don't blame the people for not participating in lawsuits, because we've been trained that the judicial system's not gonna do anything for us, that it's not gonna help us. So,
Well, Mr. Harper, right there, I'm gonna stop you
Okay,
right
go
there,
ahead.
because Flint has some questions, and there's some things that, I want you to clear up.
sure,
Were you responsible, were you the spearheader on bringing those attorneys to Flint to sue for the Flint water crisis?
no, the attorneys were here before I came,
Okay,
but
okay,
let's, if there's a timeline thing, I just wanna talk to the timeline if
let's
you're saying.
go to the time.
So, I got invited to Flint for the first time by Ryan Coogler, who, for those who don't know Ryan Coogler, he's the writer, director, producer of Black Panther, and that series of movies.
Okay,
Extremely successful director.
okay,
But this is before Black Panther.
okay,
So Ryan Coogler knew that, wanted to do something for Flint.
okay,
So he organized an event that raised about $100,000. He invited Ava DuVernay, who's a very successful director,
yes,
Jesse Williams, who's an actor, successful actor, Stevie Wonder,
yes,
myself, and some other folks. We all came, I think Jasmine Sullivan was there.
okay,
We all came to Flint and did basically a community support event, raised about $100,000. And Ryan asked me to do a speech or a talk, so I did a talk at that.
okay,
That was probably, I'm not sure exactly the year, it was probably early 2016, we'd have to just look it up, but
okay,
that was my first time. And what was so interesting is, I did my talk, and as I was walking around, an older brother came up to me, was like, "Man, Hill, I've read your books, I love what you've done for our community, for the communities, and what you do for our community. A lot of celebrities come here to Flint,
and
they take a picture,
yes, they
post on Instagram, and we never see them again. I know that's not you, don't be that." I said, "Man, I promise I'll come back to Flint. Just let me know what I should do, how I can serve, and whatever." I said, "Absolutely." And so in that process, I got introduced to some different folks, and as I was learning, they were saying very few people are signing up, and the lawyers are already here. I mean, obviously, when there's mass damage,
They're gonna
the
come.
class action
Right.
lawyers come.
They're gonna
They just come.
Right.
And so the question always is, with these types of things, do you do a mass tort action or do you do a class action? And this is about how to best try to sue. I mean, that's what we're talking about. Problem is, we undersue. Our community undersues. And when I was asked, could I help bring more people in, educate folks about why signing up for the lawsuit is important, the most important takeaway on that was, and I agreed to do it, come back. Most important takeaway on that is, if you didn't sign up, and there was a lot of misinformation being spread around.
Yes.
If you didn't sign up for the lawsuit in some way, you were definitely not getting compensated. And there were a lot of different ways to get compensated, because people will come up to me and say, "Hill, man, I don't think I was poisoning my leg, so I guess I can't get compensated." No. Do you own a house in the area? Oh, yes. Well, you've been harmed financially by the fact that your housing values have completely tanked. So because of the water crisis, you had a financial harm. He's like, "I can sue for that?" Yes, you can sue for that.
But that class action lawsuit didn't do any of that, and the people still haven't been compensated.
People still haven't been paid, and I have been beating down the doors of the law firms as well as trying to figure out, and this is why voting matters. Now, people would say, "Well, my vote doesn't matter." The person who's controlling this money and the lawsuit is the federal judge. Who appoints and who confirms federal judges?
The people.
No, the senators.
Well,
The
right.
senators.
But we
So
put
who
you-
you
right.
put into their Senate seat, who you put into those seats, who you put in, the person who appoints is the president. The person who confirms, the Senate and the legislature.
Right. And we the people.
And we the people decide who the president is and who's doing the appointing and who's sitting in the seats to do it. Now all of us understand that hundreds of federal judges were held up from being appointed during the Obama administration, right?
Right.
Because of the United States Senate. They held it up.
Absolutely.
Through filibuster, through all these things. And so who you have as your federal judges matters. And that's why when we talk about voting on all levels, it matters. The fact that here in Michigan, we have this triple blue leadership matters. It's expanded voting rights, repeal right to work. They've done a lot of really good things because they've had the leadership in place now to move this stuff forward. I have been railing about the fact that folks haven't been paid. Why? Because it decreases the number of people that are gonna get paid. Why? Because we know in poor, more marginalized communities that people have housing insecurity. So what does that mean? It means they have to move more. And in the context of a lawsuit, if you lose track of the people, particularly a class action, if you lose track of the people, then they're not gonna get paid. In fact, this judge is about to eliminate a bunch of people who have signed up.
What?
Yes. And folks don't know that. They're about to get eliminated because the judge is gonna say, well, you attorney, you don't even know who your client is. They don't have a full file. Their file's not complete. Yeah, they signed up initially, but they didn't go through the testing. Or yeah, they signed up initially, but they've moved and we have no way to track them down. They're eliminated. And that, you wanna talk about what makes my blood boil, is that the fact that they've extended this so long, they made it that people are falling out of the lawsuit, even if they already signed up. Because I came here to work to get people to sign up. And I feel like I worked as hard as I could, got more people. I think that when I first here, there was, I can't remember how many people signed up, like maybe 7,000 to 10,000. Reggie, who's here, could speak to that.
Come on in and
So
pull
come on
up
in,
a
Reggie,
chair.
pull up a chair. How wide does the frame go?
Mickey has it.
Can you get with this?
How you doing, Mr. Reggie?
Come on closer. So it's important that Reggie's here because he can speak to more of the detail of today and what's happening right now because he is still doing this day-to-day work. And he can give an overview. You know, we were just talking about the work I was.
Oh, you were listening? Okay,
good.
So and that's what, you know what, that's what I do.
Okay.
And you know me, Reggie, you watch me,
Yeah, you gonna peel the layers back.
and that's what I wanna do.
You gonna
for
get to the
people.
bottom line.
And that's, people have the misconception in Flint. Hill Harper brought the attorneys here to fleece the community. Hill Harper came, signed up everybody, left, and we never heard from you again. He just told us that he's still advocating for us.
And there's one thing folks never talk about. There's a couple of things folks never
I
talk
wanna
about.
hear
One
about
of the things they never talk about is that I filed an injunction when they stopped. They tried to pause giving the free water access to the community. They wanted to pause it. It was costing money to the state of Michigan, blah, 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 whoever. They tried to stop it. We filed an injunction with my name on it to stop them from pausing. No one talks about that.
No, not at all.
Nobody talks about that.
Yeah.
Then, when COVID hit, I'm in my house in Detroit. I started getting calls from people that had signed up for the lawsuit. They didn't know who to reach out to, but they were like, "Hill, there is no water here."
Yeah.
And I knew that was true because even in wealthier communities, there was no water on the shelves. But in Flint, having no water is even more catastrophic than those communities. Because at least those people feel comfortable turning on their faucet and getting water.
Absolutely.
You know, and so I immediately started raising money and I got emergency water. I got 2 truckloads, 5,000 gallons of water here, $65,000 it cost to get emergency water trucked in these 2-gallon cardboard kind of like container things. We had a line and it was, I mean, this is the height of COVID where people were really scared about 2 weeks in. And so everyone's masked up and folks were scared. We had a line of cars about 3 hours long. and you want to talk about breaking your heart. Yeah. Handing water through these windows and people driving away. People were scared. People had no water.
We back on.
Okay, we're back on.
All right.
All right. So I'm sorry about that. We are back on. You always get phone calls at the worst time, and I don't know how to work this new phone yet. So I'm sorry about that, Mr. Hill Harper. So we left off with
What did we miss in what we just said? Or we didn't miss anything?
no, we were turning it over to Reggie.
Okay.
And Reggie was gonna talk
A little
about
bit about that.
what role do you play in the water crisis? And Hill Harper, you know what Flint wants to know.
Absolutely. To be honest with you, I would be considered what you would call low man on the totem pole.
There's no low man on the totem pole.
I deal with the trying to get the information from the residents, then
Well, let folks know who you are, so they know
So-
where you're from, they know who you are.
Oh,
It's
okay.
a piece
He'll
of-
just go, he just
No,
gonna
just
take
a piece
my-
of background,
my
because
interview.
they don't know, if they don't know who he is, then how can they
I
validate what he
get
has
it,
to say?
they kind of do, but it's okay. I'm Reggie Davidson, and my role in the water crisis lawsuit actually started out with me working with a nonprofit called the Flint Restoration Group.
Okay.
Before I joined Napoli Skolnick as their manager of the Flint operations, I started off with a nonprofit called the Flint Restoration Group. And the Flint Restoration Group raised almost $300,000 and gave out water and started a study with the MDEQ at the time, which is now EGLE. We found a test group of about 55 houses, whittled it down, put whole house water filtration systems in those houses, and then the MDEQ monitored those houses for an entire year with a filtration system called the Filter King 03.
Okay.
And the Filter King 03 was a point of entry whole house water filtration system that was designed to filter every drop of water coming in the house. And so I worked with that nonprofit to get that established even before the lawsuit had happened. And I was able to get businessmen in Flint, Junk Iron and Metal, a few other groups, that we came up with hundreds of thousands of dollars to put these filtration systems in homes for free, because we know Flint people didn't have the money. And
Absolutely.
these units were almost $3,000
Yes,
at
they
the
do
time.
cost a lot.
They slowly went down in price, and that baton was passed over with Mike Fortek and his group Artesian. They then started working with another group called the National Clean Water Collective in Sierra Scott.
Okay.
And Hill Harper was brought in with National Clean Water Collective in Sierra Scott, and they kind of took over that function on the water filtration systems, because Flint Restoration Group started going in a different direction.
Key word, Hill Harper was brought in. That's what I'm trying to get that message
Well,
out. He
let's
wasn't
be clear about a
let's
couple things.
pick on Flint.
Let's be clear about a couple things. There's about 25 law firms that have the bandwidth to come into any town USA on a national level and just get into a big lawsuit like this. And in Michigan, there's a few, like Pitt McGee. So those were some of the lawsuit firms that were here first. And you don't have to call out anybody's names, but Eric Mays, who I have great respect for, he was one of the persons who announced I brought the lawyers in and to come into the lawsuit. And in fact, it was a combination of things. There was no one person. Anytime you have a lawsuit with this type of damage, the lawyers was coming. You don't have to work. Then they will go try and chase after people like the Hills and the Ben Crumps to come in and try and help people sign up because of the mass confusion. If you remember, a lot of people were saying initially that was on the ground, activating and things, don't sign up for the lawsuit,
right,
because you're going to be suing yourself.
Right.
That's
And
right.
from the very beginning, Napoli Skolnick, for example, was one of the groups that said, look, we know Flint don't have no money. They knew Flint had a $20 million municipal insurance policy and was incapable of really paying anything more than that unless you're gonna pass it on to the people. And guess what? When the settlement happened in August 2020, Flint's contribution was 20 million, equal to its municipal insurance policy. So the people of Flint was never the target. Flint, quite frankly, should have, as a municipality, sued the state third party. But that's a different argument. The statute of limitations ran out on that because they could have made that claim.
On purpose, I say.
Well, you know what? Flint was under receivership by the state of Michigan, our tab board. So the decisions to switch over to the water was done by a state RTAB board because Flint was under receivership.
Absolutely.
They wasn't even in control of our own city. And so that's why the state of Michigan ended up with 600 million. Let me tell you one of the biggest misconceptions here. And it's so sad, Wyntis, because of the confusion. People just don't trust litigation. Phil was touching on that a little bit of how Black communities aren't litigious, we don't sue. But more so than that, we don't even trust the lawyers.
We don't.
And there's some understanding there. We just don't. So as a result, you had about, if you count the people that was working in Flint, you had about 98,000 people affected. But guess what? At the time of the settlement, Wyntis, in August of 2020, about just under 30,000 people were on the suit. Now imagine this, you got 98,000 people affected, but barely 30,000 was signed up at the time of the settlement. So the settlement was for a mere 600 million, which everybody say was historic. But if you had more people signed up, then the settlement would have been larger.
Yes, and so this is a key point. This is a key point. Because I use.
Oh, we forgot about you.
It's okay. There's a community in Los Angeles where I know folks even live in the community called Porter Ranch.
Okay.
Folks should look this up. Porter Ranch, wealthy, predominantly not us community, had a gas leak situation where the gas company, something burst and it would just basically ruin the air, the whole thing. The percentage of folks that signed up, I want to say, maybe it was just, I want to say maybe 2,000, 3,000 homes. You know, like it's a community. It's not Flint, not the size of Flint, not 100,000.
Right.
95% signed up for the lawsuit. Their remedy was $1.8 billion.
See,
wow.
1.8 billion. So the message here, and this is what I have been saying all along, that folks aren't going to try to poison Porter Ranches. I mean, it was an accident that happened because they're like, whoa, we don't want 95%. If we had 95% sign up, that means we'd have 95,000 lawsuits. There's no way they could get away with that level of settlement. As an example, what happened with Nasser, Dr. Nasser, was horrific. And I am not in any way, let's be very clear, let me preface what I'm about to say very clearly. I am not comparing harm of what happened to those gymnasts. Not comparing harm.
Understood.
There's no comparison. It was horrific what happened to them, horrible. Basically 100% sign up. I think it was about 32, 36 individuals who had a horrific experience, about the same amount for that settlement as for the Flint settlement. So just as an understanding, the more people that participate, the more people that prove they were harmed, because at the end of the day, a tort is about a harm.
It's a harm.
A mass tort, it's a harm. So the more that you prove how people were dying from Legionnaires here, that's, that's death.
Yes.
We know kids were lead poisoned here. We know folks lost tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of land property value. We know people who lost businesses. We know people who lost, there were lives lost, businesses lost, property value lost. Kids and learning disabilities from lead poisoning. This harm was horrific to an entire city that already was dealing with trauma from job loss, plant closures, union loss, all of these different things. And this gets my blood going.
I know, I can tell
Because,
you're passionate about it.
because people who have been taken advantage of and experienced trauma consistently seem to get punched in the face over and over. And then COVID comes along and punches the community in the face again. So the fact, folks that are upset, I get it. Hurt people hurt people.
Right.
And people get taken advantage of by misinformation.
Right.
My heart has always been pure. Anybody can check my receipts. That's fine. And I'm grown. And people can criticize me or come at me as long as they know the truth.
Right.
And they just need to
That's
learn
all
the
we
truth.
want
All
to
they
do
do
is
is
the truth.
if you do the research, you can find it online. I mean, all the stuff we're talking about is there. There's no lies here, there's no cover. Because at the end of the day, I'm still aggressive. And anybody who wants to criticize me for trying to sign people up for lawsuits, let me tell you something. I will still go across the country everywhere and try to get our community to be more litigious. Because I believe if we don't start fighting back judicially, through the court system, we gotta fight back through the voting system and who we elect and who we have represent us. We gotta fight back through the court system and not allowing corporations or polluters or bad actors to come in our communities and just wreak havoc. We gotta fight back through the economy itself and undergird small business, the socioeconomic stuff, just like what we talked about. We have to create jobs. We are not owners of the businesses in most of our own communities. And so to solve a lot of these problems is multi-pronged. There's not one solution. And the fact that people are pissed off and upset, I understand it. I am too.
Well, Mr. Harper, because of time constraints and Mother Nature, we couldn't control that today. Hopefully we can do a part 2. Maybe we can do something online,
Absolutely.
Or something.
I want Reggie to at least really quickly explain where things are at right now so people who have signed up understand. And there could be a second bite to the apple coming up with another lawsuit against different parties, and people should be aware of that, and they need to know that that's possible as well.
And while he wraps that up, my last question, real quick, for this segment on part 1. Our pipes still aren't done. We still don't have clean water because of that. They don't give away water anymore. If I was a Flint resident, I'm watching you.
Yeah.
People are watching you. Why would I vote for Hill Harper?
If I was a US Senator during this crisis and even next year if things aren't done, I would fight to have special emergency appropriations given to this community from a federal dollar perspective. At the end of the day, it's like my grandmama says, follow the money, y'all. Now follow the money.
Right.
That's it. And so what happens in the legislature is what you put into a bill that apportions resources matters. And if you don't have anybody that's representing you in Washington that cares anything about the community, the pipes, the whatever, then there's never gonna be anything inserted into any legislation that's going to bring those resources here. And that is true across the board. And folks in Flint tell me if they feel that the federal government and their representatives, because the thing is, they've had representatives in Washington.
Yes.
And this is not a knock on Dan Kildee at all. Dan Kildee, I believe, has been fighting, but as a congressperson in a body of 400 plus, but in a 50-50 Senate context, that senator has a lot of power.
Yes.
Look at Joe Manchin and what Joe Manchin has been doing with manipulating things for his home state. I mean, inserting little paragraphs into these different bills.
Right.
How come no one's helping and inserting paragraphs for Flint?
That's the question.
That is the question.
Okay.
And that, because we haven't elected someone who would do that for the community.
Me and he'll sit up here all day. I can see
I
how
know that's
passionate
right.
it is. But I want you to answer the question real quick before we have to go. Where are we at right now? What's to come? We're gonna do a part 2 of this, but just real quick.
Oh, man. The people of Flint at this point, if you have not turned in the required information, the qualifying information that will get you your check, I don't care who your attorney is, you need to call your attorney and ask them, am I in a draft category? There are 30 categories between the adults and the children. And if you're not in the category right now, that means you have missing information and you're not going to get any money. If you are in the category and your information is not turned in, you are not going to get any money. Over the next month, maybe a month and change, the judge is eliminating cases. There are no more
And that
cases
makes
that's
me
going to be
angry.
added.
Because
Cases are
most
going
of
to
the
be
people, it's not their
eliminated,
fault.
but let me tell you why. They're going to be eliminated because they don't have your ID. They don't have a birth certificate. They don't have something that proves the kids lived in Flint or went to school in Flint at the time of contamination. And all kids qualify.
Yes, that's
All
correct.
kids qualify.
If the kids were living in
If the
Flint, they
kids were
qualify,
living in
even if
Flint,
you did a
if
red
you
test or
qualify
not.
them living in Flint, they will get some money. But if you don't provide the information to show they were in Flint or identifying information such as their birth certificate, something as basic as that, their case is going to get
This
dismissed.
is why I want
Now,
people to
now
sign
the
up.
good news is there's going to be a little bit of money
I see.
set aside for the kids regardless, because to no fault of their own, but the adults, they're gonna get left behind on this. I'm gonna have to tell y'all that statistic because you can verify this with the court. Over 50%, just under 80% of the people have deficiencies, and the court is gonna dismiss cases for deficiencies. Napoli-Skolnick Flint Intake Center, I'm looking for about 4 people. I'll pay the $17 to $20 an hour. Come over. If you got your own transportation, I'll pay you gas every day. I need you to go door to door to help me get information for people that are missing information in terms of our clients. I've always hired Flint people. At one point, I had 21 people under payroll helping with this. So I need some people. If any of y'all meet that criteria, I got a job for you because there's work to be done. I don't know about all of this stuff on the high level. I know on the street level, I go door to door. I went to over 4,623 houses in the last 42 days, knocking on doors, trying to get information, and I was only 6% successful.
This is
Only 6% successful
6%
out of all of those houses we went to.
6%.
And
I don't care about the politics of this. I need people in Flint to get their money. You gotta turn in your information. You must call your lawyer. I don't care who your lawyer is, even if it's the Archer Group and no lawyer. You gotta make sure that you're in the draft category. 2, that they have all of the information for you and your children to qualify you. And as Hill said, there's 9 other injuries other than lead that'll qualify an adult for money. If you had high blood pressure during the time and your doctor verifies it with medical records, hair loss, skin rashes, anemic, a stroke, gastrointestinal issues, lung pneumonia. There are about 9 other
Financial
conditions.
harm.
And if you were a
Financial
property
harm,
owner, if you were a landlord, if you owned a home,
if you would have been in my town hall, you would have heard
there's a
about it.
category for that. There's a category
Yeah,
for
we
that.
know town hall.
Category 28, category 29, and category 30 deals with financial harm for property owners, business owners. So please call your lawyer.
And so,
Call me at 888-900-7034, 888-900-7034. My direct extension is 3701. So I know Hill was running for office. I want to take advantage of the time to come in. I'm not running for office, but to tell you guys about what you need to get your money. Let me tell you something. 400-something million after the lawyers get their money is coming into the hands of Flint people. The question is it going to come into the hands of a few Flint people, or is it going to come into the hands of those who signed up? Because it's going to be no money left on the floor except for what's going to the kids. So it's going to be a great and dreadful day. Some people are going to get really paid, and some people will get nothing. Come on, y'all. Make sure, I don't care what the politics are at this point. If you signed up, turn your information in so you can get your money.
All right, hey guys.
What was that extension?
3701 was the extension. That's my direct extension. It'll ring me. If I'm not in the office, it'll bounce off to my cell phone.
and if anybody wants to talk about my history here, ask Reggie. He's a straight shooter. He's from the community.
Well,
He
we're gonna
knows.
do a part 2.
Yeah, because
We're gonna do a part 2.
yeah, there's a lot of stuff he'll get outside of the lawsuit. He brought water to Haskell,
And
he
I
brought
wanna get into
filtration
all
systems
that.
to Haskell.
Right, yes.
and we love anybody that fights for this community. One thing about it, you got activists on this level, like nobody else in Flint.
Yes.
They fight, and I wish we can come together and connect the dots because it's a lot going on here, Wyntis, that's unsaid. But if we follow the money, you'll see how the tragedy started. I did a show with DeWine on that.
All right.
But thank you very much for having
Thank
me
you.
to tell people to check with their lawyers.
Check with your lawyers. Listen, I wanna thank you again, Mr.
Thank
Bill
you,
Harper, for
Wyntis.
coming out.
Thank
Thank you, Reggie. We will schedule a part 2, I promise you, because we wanna get more in depth in this. I wanna hear more about the lawsuit. I wanna hear more about what Mr. Harper has done for the community. I wanna know the same things that you wanna know. So stay tuned for the Wyntis Hall Show, and thanks again for joining A10 News Media.